let's preview the Clemson Tiger spring practices. We got some things we got to take a look at within this program as they are looking to go back-to-back as ACC champions. Going to be a new OC, going to be a new quarterback, a lot of newness in Clemson, South Carolina. But what else will they add that's new? And that's where I want to start. The transfer portal has long been a topic of discussion around Clemson Tiger football. And my question as we move into the spring, and this is honestly a question for post-spring, does Clemson eventually go into the portal? Do they eventually go in and add something that they need? Because Dabo Swinney has done things his way, and we've talked about it a lot on this show. We support the way that Dabo Swinney does things. But in modern college football, there is a point where the lack of utilizing the transfer portal, if you're not going undefeated every single year, could eventually be seen as a disadvantage. And Clemson, one of the best programs in the country, but even so, I think they could use some help at wide receiver. So my question is, do we see enough during spring practice from that wide receiver room or from this team as a whole to maybe ward off the need to go to the portal? Because what I saw in 2022, again, really good football team. They averaged 6.8 yards a pass. That's good for 86th in the country. As many weapons as Clemson has, that's a number that's too low for what they want to achieve. They want to win national titles. They want to compete in the college football playoff. You have to be more explosive in the pass game. And when I look at this receiver room for Clemson, Antonio Williams is one of those guys that popped last year, will pop again this coming year, is one of the few guys within that group that I see as a true burner, meaning he can really challenge the safeties and he can allow you offensively to stretch the field. A lot of big bodies, a lot of guys that can go win 50-50 for you, a lot of this 6'3 plus kind of wide receivers, but guys that can truly utilize some speed to stretch the field, I think they could benefit from going into the portal post-spring and adding some of that. Now, that's one of the reasons, though, why we have to really take a look at this team during spring practice. What's the temperature of that wide receiver room? Do we see some guys step up with this new offensive scheme and see them benefit from a new approach under Garrett Riley? The wide receiver room is something I'm watching very closely during spring practice, and my question would be, how much do we see during the spring in relation to what we want to do in the portal afterwards? Again, Clemson, not a team that goes into the portal, but is this the year, as they have bent a little bit on what Dabo Swinney likes to do, do we see him bend even further and maybe recalibrate even further by utilizing the portal? More thoughts on that in a second. If you haven't yet subscribed to the On3 YouTube channel, we would love to have you a part of this. College football content every single day. We're live twice a week. Also, follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at JDPikel. So what I was saying was, do we see Dabo Swinney recalibrate? Because typically how he had done things was he promotes internally, right? In terms of coordinators. Well, Brandon Streeter didn't get it done a season ago for Clemson in terms of their expectations, and so he makes an outside hire. Again, Dabo Swinney, known for promoting internally, known for not using the portal. He bent a little bit not bent a little bit. He just straight up pivoted in terms of how he hired his coach. Hired Garrett Riley to be the new OC, and that's the next thing I'm looking at. What is the mesh for this offense under a new coordinator, especially in the pass game? Because you look at a couple of losses last year for Clemson. In both those games, Notre Dame and South Carolina, they threw for less than 200 yards through the air. That can't be the reality for them going forward. So the question I have along with this, the thing we need to preview, is the progress of a young Jedi, Cade Klubnik. He's going to get the reins this year. He's going to be QB1. There's no discussion about that. What is the new marriage like for him in this offense? Because I really like for him the fact that it's a clean slate. If you had gone under the previous system a year ago, there would have been other guys that are also familiar with the system and are familiar with how Clemson does things. With this new offense, everybody's at square one, and Cade Klubnik being QB1 going into the year at a new offensive scheme allows him to take on a different leadership role than maybe he would have been able to had the offense stayed the same. He now can be on the leading role there and sort of take charge as, no, here's how the scheme is. Here's the new playbook. I'm going to make sure I know every single position backwards and forwards. So when we have an MA, which is football acronym for missed assignment, when we have an issue like that, I know it right away. I can help that receiver. I can help that tight end. I can help us in pass protection, whatever it ends up being. Just being able to have everybody on square one and have your quarterback have the opportunity now to take the reins firmly. I'm excited for Cade Klubnik. I'm very excited for Cade Klubnik because think about what the Achilles heel has been for Clemson last 2 seasons or so. Not that the offense was bad. You got some dudes. I've said it before. We are enormous supporters of Will Shipley on this program. We are enormous supporters of Clemson as a program on this show. But when it comes to what has held them back, it's been consistent offensive output. It's been being able to have multifaceted offensive approaches. So we're excited about Garrett Riley. We're excited about Cade Klubnik and the way this offense could look. But how do they mesh going forward? How do they mesh with this new scheme? Because Garrett Riley, we saw what he did with Max Duggan. Max Duggan became a Heisman finalist in that offense. I think Cade Klubnik could be teed up to do some of the same things, but the spring, taking the temperature of the spring for Matt Conley at Clemson Online, that'll be really interesting. Clemson Sports, our Clemson On 3 site. Make sure you're locked in over there online. Last thing I'm looking at, last thing we got to gauge during the spring, who defensively steps into those leadership roles that are left from some of the guys that are top talents and going to be NFL draft picks. You got Trenton Simpson, you got Miles Murphy, Brian Brzee, KJ Henry. All elite talents, all guys that also took on leadership roles within that Clemson defense. Now, Clemson's going to have guys from a personnel standpoint. Clemson's going to have guys with a lot of stars next to their name coming out of high school that will be able to step up to the plate and have a good chance to achieve that. But defensively, leadership, having someone to be the bell cow for you, that's extremely important. And you lose some of those guys that were bell cows for you last year. Now, 2 guys that I'm watching very closely to step up in this defense next year, and they had a great year last year, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and Barrett Carter. 2 linebackers, both very consistent players on the field. How do they step up in terms of leadership? And this is something you're going to have to make sure you watch the message boards for. Okay, Matt Conley does a phenomenal job for us here at On 3 covering Clemson. Make sure you're following him on Twitter. Make sure you got a membership for us online in terms of our Clemson On 3 site. Make sure you're locked in over there. There's going to be a lot of good practice notes. A lot of things that are hard to quantify when you just turn on the tape. Hey, Barrett Carter was leading this drill well. Hey, Jeremiah Trotter, first to the football, holding everybody to the standard. That's what I'm curious to see. Who is that bell cow? Again, I think it's going to be these 2 guys, but there's also other players within that Clemson defense that I'm sure will take on a prominent role in terms of leadership and will do a good job stepping into that void that is left by some of the guys headed to the NFL. So Clemson, the standard is the standard. Win the ACC, compete for the college football playoff, compete for national titles. That is what is expected because of the level that this team has played at over the last few years and the level that Dabo Swinney has set the bar. Okay? Very excited for Clemson. Very excited to track all these things during spring practice. Curious to see what happens in the portal. Last thing I'll say on this, you can protect culture while adding talent. You can protect your culture while still bringing in talent that's going to help you on the football field. And this culture is special at Clemson, South Carolina. But I'm just curious to see if they don't maybe pluck 1 or 2 guys to help them in terms of making that pass game more explosive. So keep an eye on that. Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley, I think is going to be a success. But excited to see how they progress and how they mesh into spring football and then who steps up in terms of leadership on that Clemson defense. That's been their calling card the last couple of years. I mean, only allowed like 22 points a game last year. So very solid defensively for Clemson. Keep it locked right here. This has been The Hard Count. Nick, break, lift, and heavy. This is your show. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JD Piquel, but we're going to keep the party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.